It's January 3rd, historic district expansion into Union, Lincoln Streets area. And this is the public hearing. We had a approval from Mass Historic, and within 60 days of that approval, we're required to hold a public hearing. So at this hearing, we'll hear any input from the public. We'll have a couple of presentations first, and we'll hopefully answer some questions. And at the end of the meeting, we'll, once everybody's done, we'll take a vote to move forward with proposing this to town meeting. Just first, just a couple of quick house cleaning items. We had minutes that we didn't do from last time because there weren't a lot of people here. I believe it was December 27th.
Can you say that again, please?
December 27th meeting minutes
We have a December 13th. Those are
before this. So this one just came out then, right?
Right, those are the ones for last week's meeting. But we didn't do December 13th.
Okay.
We were waiting.
So did everyone get a chance to read December 13th?
I wasn't here for that one.
Everyone got a chance to read it? Did someone want to make a motion on those minutes?
Motion to approve?
Who's doing the minutes? Oh, Lisa is. Motion by Kim, second.
I wasn't
here.
But I think you could still approve minutes. You can read it. You don't have to be here unless there's second, Rich, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so December 13th and then December 27th. When were they sent out?
I sent them. I think you have them. That's
Right.
what you have.
But I mean, when did you email them out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yesterday?
Yeah, I think so.
Did everyone get a chance to look at that? If not, I have a copy here if you want to refresh.
It was only Ryan and you who were at that meeting, so.
But same thing, we could, did someone want to make a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ryan, second.
Are we accepting the minutes? Is that what you're doing right now?
We already approved the 13th,
Okay.
December 13th.
Okay.
Now this is the 27th of December.
So I
Motion by
second.
Ryan, second Kim.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Just a couple of other really quick things. I don't want to hold anything up, but in the Spire Center construction meeting, they have a price for taking down the chimney and one for leaving it, which it's in pretty bad shape. They'd have to literally fill it with cement. So that cost was about $70,000. And then just taking it down was like $7,000. So where it's not a very contributing element of the building, I thought I'd bring in a couple of pictures and just get everyone's thoughts.
Which,
If-
is it the chimney on that side?
Yeah, it's on the back. You can see it from the front, but it's not in use anymore. There's no need to keep it unless it's something. So I told Bob Hollis I would bring it to the commission, see what they thought. Does anybody have any opinion? Ann, what do you think?
I mean, from that photo, it doesn't strike me as problematic, but
Well, if you want to wait, we can. We're not taking a vote. I just wanted to give input. We could wait if you want to go by and take a look at it.
You said you can or cannot see it?
You can see it, but like I said, I don't think it's it's not like a contributing factor to that style of a building.
would that
That's not
require a demo delay for
No.
that?
No.
It might.
You know.
He might. Are we all right with it, or does people want to go see it, or?
It's a very prominent feature of the building.
Is there another one on this side?
I think it's just the one.
Looks taller.
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, okay.
the
Oh,
rest
yeah.
of us are-
Use the microphones if you're gonna. So do you want me to just say we're okay with it, or? If nobody has a. And then one other quick thing for Harbortown. This sign had been approved already. It was just the letters on the building. So they wanted to make a change and wanted to know how to proceed if they'd have to come back in. So I told them I would show it to everyone, and if they were okay, so this is the revised, is just putting a panel behind it instead of sticking it on the building. I think it looks better with the panel.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, they look better.
It's the same exact sign, just with like
Panel?
with a raised panel behind it.
That's fine.
So I'll just tell them that's okay then. All right. Lee, did you want to? Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development for the Town of Plymouth. So I'm just going to go through a brief presentation. We've gone now 2 public forums, a fair amount of public outreach. I think many people have seen this already. This is the Historic District Commission's official public hearing on this. I would point out that we did notify all the butters of this meeting too, so we did send a mailing out.
Lee,
to all
one
the
quick
butters.
thing. Did everyone get a copy of the frequently asked questions piece of paper?
Yeah, so there are frequently asked questions handout there if people are interested also. So just briefly to go over where we are. So this is the existing historic district that's up on the screen. It starts on South Park Ave over by the Rotary on Water Street, extends down all of Main Street, Burial Hill, down on Summer Street all the way past the Jenny Grist Mill. It includes the Jenny Grist Mill site itself, down along Town Brook, and then along Water Street, and then all of Water Street here. The proposal that the commission is considering tonight at this public hearing is to extend it. And the extension area goes along Sandwich Street here, down on Lincoln Street past the Nathaniel Thornton School and the administration building for the school, down to the Plymouth Yacht Club property, along Union Street, back out in front of the marina, out to Water Street again. So this general area here is where the commission is seeking to expand the district. Just some pictures, I won't mention much, but again, mainly this is the Bradford Union Street area. We did a survey. We mailed out 42 surveys to the property owners within here. Here are the results that we got back. We got 17 responses, a 43% response. So do you think that the Bradford area, Union Street, Lincoln Street area is historically significant? 12 people said yes, 5 said no. Do you think the character of the area should be preserved? Again, very similar. 11 said yes, 4 said no. Are you concerned about demolition? 11 said yes, 6 said no. Do you support expanding the district into your neighborhood? Fewer respondents, and it was split 6-6 on that one. And then the last one is, do you have concerns about extending the review process and the impact it has on your property? And 12 people said yes, they had concerns, and 3 said they didn't. Just to point out, if this area is added, there are 3 types of certificates that would be out there. One is a certificate of appropriateness. So if you have a project that requires review through the commission, they would look at your proposal and determine whether it's appropriate or not for the district. The second one is non-applicability, and we have a second slide that will give you some examples. Any kind of work, interior work or work that's maintenance, things that are repair or replace in kind, you would get a certificate on non-applicability, meaning that you don't have to go through any additional approvals with the commission. And then the last one, which is one we don't see often, is the certificate of hardship. And that is one where the board would determine, you're a commission, the commission would determine that failure to approve the request that's before them would result in a significant hardship to the property owner, financial or otherwise, and so that they would allow some change that may not be consistent with their guidelines, but again, they allow it because they determined that there's a hardship to comply with the guidelines. Examples of things that would be reviewed: any additions to a building, any demolitions of a building, chimneys, exterior lighting, fencing, drives, pathways, garden houses, sheds, mechanical, plumbing, and vents that are visible from a public way, paint, siding, signage, solar rooftop panels, swimming pools, and windows. And I point out only those that are visible from a public way. So if you have something that's, any of these items that are not visible from a public way, it's not subject to the commission's review. We just threw this slide in to say that one of the discussions people had was, well, I don't want to be told what I can do for a color, or I don't want to be forced to have a white house. And this just is a palette of historically consistent or approvable type colors, and you can see there's quite a range of colors that are included in that palette. Examples of things that aren't subject to review: anything that happens on the inside of the building is not subject to review. Anything that's done that's not visible from a public way is not subject to review. Any kind of replacement for like, so if you have vinyl windows and you're replacing vinyl windows, you have vinyl siding and you're replacing vinyl siding, for replacement and like or maintenance, those are not subject to any review from the commission. The process that you would go through is that you'd contact the commission through my office, the Department of Planning and Development, determine the necessary certificates. You would work with the staff in my office to schedule the appropriate hearings. Typically what would happen is somebody would come in and meet with the commission that you have before you tonight informally to show them what you're thinking about doing, and they would give you some guidance and some information about what they like or maybe dislike. And then based on that information, you'd follow up with a formal public hearing where a direct abutters are notified, and then the commission would look at the information you propose, the documents, the plans, and render a decision based on what you've submitted. And again, I think it's important to note both the commission and staff work through and try to work with property owners to do something that is mutually acceptable. And that is what we had for the presentation.
Lee, is the study report available on the town's website?
Yes, it is. So
Okay.
the study report is on the town's website.
Okay.
And that would be, so you would go to the town's website, and under groups, it's Historic District Commission's website, and there's a page there that has the study available. I also have a few copies here too, limited, but if somebody wants one, I'm happy to make that available too.
Excuse me, Lee,
Yes.
do you have the survey online? Is that the study report you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
The reason I ask is one part of that study, I think it's like one page that I'll just read quickly. It says, reflecting a very busy port, the Bradford Union Street neighborhood grew throughout the 19th century. However, by the early part of the 20th century, commercial activity in the harbor had greatly diminished. By the 1980s, the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority recognized the decline taking place and commissioned a master plan for the revitalization of the Bradford Street area. The plan recognized the unique historic significance of the area and recommended an approach that will include historic preservation. The plan notes that in a survey of residents, the establishment of a local historic district was supported. The listing of the Bradford Union Street Historic District on the National Register of Historic Places in 1983 further demonstrated the uniqueness and significance of the area to the history of the town. Today, the collection of buildings extant in the neighborhood conveys a distinct area of Plymouth history and reflects the occupations and hardworking individuals that maintained an active harbor of fishing, shipping, and industry. Also included within the proposed district are two school buildings located on Lincoln Street. The old Plymouth High School dates from 1892. The building served as the high school until 1936. It was later converted to use as Plymouth Town Hall, and then Nathaniel Morton School was constructed in 1913 in the colonial revival style. Additions were added in 1917 and 1936. Both buildings have served municipal uses for over 100 years. So I just thought that was important, that over the years, people have saw it to be important enough to save and register it as a nationally registered historic district. The Redevelopment Authority in the 80s revitalized the area. So I think it's in great shape. It's a great area, but I think it's important to make sure that we could maintain that. And I think as far as the historic district goes, the only sticking point we have really, and for good reason, is vinyl siding or vinyl windows. It's not a very high quality performing product. It discolors it warps, it doesn't breathe, so you'll get water behind your vinyl siding, and you'll have water damage on the building. There's other materials, you know, not just wood, but there's a lot of, you know, there's ash siding we've used, there's hardy plank siding we've used in buildings. So there's a lot of other materials out there, given that vinyl is the cheapest material out there, and there's a reason why it's that cheap. I just don't think it adds to a neighborhood. I think it detracts. So that's really the only sticking point we have. Other than that, we're pretty open on colors or any type of thing somebody wants to do. We just really want it to look nice, so we'll try to work with people to, you know, if they're putting something there mechanical, we'll try to screen it the best we can to, you know, keep the historic look and to keep it looking good in the neighborhood. So, I think it is another layer for people, you know, having to come to a meeting, but I think it's, you know, as a neighborhood, you know, you're protecting your neighborhood, and you know, things aren't going to change. I think your property value will stay the same by keeping it in that condition and having some pride in where you live in a historic area. So why don't we go along, and if anybody has a comment.
So I would just suggest it's a public hearing to take the public comment first.
Okay.
And then go from there. The survey results are not on the web, and if that's your desire, I'd be happy to put that up there. And we just collected it in the spreadsheet, but we can certainly put that up. Not only does it include the responses, but any comments that were made too, so we'll add that to the website.
I think we should make that, yeah, that should be up on the website, I would think.
Yep, we'll do that tomorrow
People
morning.
review it, okay. Did anybody from the public want to have an opinion, question?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure. Do you want to just give your name for the,
I'm going to.
sure.
My name is Dennis Swords. I live with my wife Alessandra at 33 Bradford Street. We've been there 54 years,
Wow.
and the property has been in our family for over 100. It's been mentioned a couple of times at these meetings that the Nathaniel Morton School property and the school department building could be in the future sold by the town. There have been a couple of other town properties, the Armory, Registry of Deeds, and Mount Pleasant School that was sold, and they were to developers for condos. And I have a question about Nathaniel Morton. If Nathaniel Morton was sold and it were going to be converted into condos, there's also a large tract of land behind it which extends behind our homes on Bradford Street to Union Street. If a developer were in compliance with 40B and Plymouth zoning regulations that apply, would this commission actually be able to prevent building on that Nathaniel Morton land?
We wouldn't have purview over the entire project to approve.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We would have purview over the entire project if it wasn't a historic district. We would be able to approve or not approve. We can turn down an entire project, or we could approve or work with the developer, and they'd be public hearings. So if people came in and lived on Bradford Street and had concerns about the setback, we would consider strongly the neighbors.
But overall, you couldn't stop it. You would have input, say, to like archaeological features.
No, we could stop it.
You could stop
We
it?
could stop it, yes. We could have stopped the marina if it was in a historic district.
I don't know.
Yeah, we could have stopped that. Lee?
Yeah, so there are kind of two things. The existing structure, as with all structures in the historic district, if you determine it's significant and deny a request for demolition or major alterations, that's certainly something you can do. Certainly in other cases that we've seen in the past where you've seen larger scale developments, a lot of times the district commission looks at the consistency with the neighborhood and whether it adds or detracts the proposal that's being done. So certainly if there's something there that's large scale that is determined to detract from the historic district and the nature of the area, I think you have perfect grounds for saying no. I would just offer a voice of concern about 40Bs. I'm not sure how the 40B would enter into this. It's a different beast that we have to deal with all the time in this town.
And it is a big piece to deal with.
Definitely,
And you all know that,
yes.
especially some of the members on the board that are really familiar with it. The other thing that I had was I was looking over the Historic Commission manual, and I came across the 4 important limitations to review authority. So what it is that you're able to have the authority to review. And as I read through them, it said, ordinary maintenance or repair of any exterior feature within the historic district which does not involve a change in design, material, color.
Yeah, just
Okay.
bring.
Do I need to start over, or? Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Thank you. Any exterior feature within the historic district which does not involve a change in design, material, color, or the outward appearance of a building or structure does not require a certificate by the commission. Replacement in any kind of exterior architectural feature is exempt from review provided the replacement matches the existing in material, color, size, and design. When we say that the replacement matches what's in place, existing at the time, for myself, that would be vinyl windows, vinyl siding, aluminum gutters. That's what's existing. If I read this correctly, I think I'm all set, but I saw what you passed out, and that really doesn't coincide with what I'm reading.
It is like for like, but if it is something that's not like a vinyl window, we would want to see something different.
But you understand that isn't
Right.
how it's written.
But it still has to fall within the historic district guidelines.
Yes, but it isn't stated that way.
Right.
So what you're saying is you have the ability to sort of take these guidelines that you have here and kind of do with them what you need to do in order to get them to conform. Correct?
No, if it's vinyl siding to vinyl siding, we don't allow vinyl siding. If it's vinyl windows to vinyl windows, we don't allow vinyl windows.
Right, but we're talking about replacing what's existing as the verbiage in this is stated. I'm not making it up, that's
Right.
what's stated here.
Yeah, it probably should say, providing it falls within the historic district
Well,
guidelines.
it doesn't, and I'm just saying this is how,
Sure.
and these are the limitations, and I'm quoting them verbatim. So if that's the case, I think this thing was written in 2008,
7, 8, yeah.
yeah, something like that. Kind of needs to be updated because this doesn't reflect
Yeah,
what it is that's going on there.
yeah, when we made those guidelines up, they were purposely left to be very open and interpretive, so there was nothing too, it just says prefers not to see. It wasn't really too specific, so we have been talking about updating the guidelines,
Well-
going through each section and updating them.
Well, I think if you want them to really reflect what it is that the board is looking for, you have to redo them. Because I'm thinking that if I have a repair to do, I'm not going to need a certificate of appropriateness for a repair. Is that true, or do I have to come before the board to repair something that's existing?
If it's like for like, you would fill out a certificate of non-applicability.
I would have to,
One of the certificates that Lee showed on that presentation was a certificate of non-applicability. That would be
realize
filled out, it would come to us at the next meeting, and we would just say yes or no, you're all set. There's no advertising, you don't have to come to the meeting. We would just need, with the certificate of non-applicability, just some information on what you're doing.
So any repair that I have to make, I have to come before the board, put together a certificate.
Well, are you saying maintenance or repair, or if you were changing
Well,
the
if it
siding?
were, in maintaining, it would be a repair, correct? If I
No.
were maintaining my home, I would be making a repair.
If you were doing maintenance, if you had vinyl siding and a few pieces fell off, and you were
Right.
just repairing your siding,
I still would have to come before the
no,
board?
you wouldn't have to.
I wouldn't
That's-
have to
That's
come.
maintenance. It's if you wanted to re-side your entire house and there's vinyl existing, then we wouldn't approve vinyl siding. And part of it's the reasons I just said about vinyl.
All right. Did you want to say something, Jane?
Do you want to go up to the mic, so?
So I was just going to clarify with Dennis. So Dennis, I know because he lives across the street from me, that Dennis has vinyl siding and vinyl windows. I have vinyl windows. So we had the storm, and, you know, I was worried that my neighbor's roof shingles were gonna come through my vinyl windows. If it did, and one of my windows was destroyed, I could replace my vinyl window, which I hate, with another vinyl window without coming before the board. If a bunch of his vinyl siding blew off on the north side, you know, he could go and replace his vinyl siding without coming before the board. But if Dennis decided that, hey, I'm gonna change the whole look of my house and I'm gonna turn it blue, it's white right now, white vinyl siding, and I want it to be blue, blue vinyl siding is not going to be an option.
Well, not the blue, but the vinyl siding.
Well, the
right?
vinyl siding, so it would have to be blue something else. And it could be blue something composite, potentially, it could be siding, it could be painted, it could be stained. I mean, there's other options.
Right.
But it's the vinyl and the vinyl that's the big problem. But a lot of damage happened in our neighborhood, and a lot of people have to put back pieces and parts. And nobody would have to come before you to put their, you know, 3 courses of roof shingles that happen to be green. You know, Carla's got green roof shingles. So if she lost 4 courses of shingles, she can go and have those replaced without, you know,
Right.
applying.
Yeah,
But if she were gonna do a roof over, you'd have to come before the board to
Right.
say, you know, I wanna put, you know, a slate roof on, what do you think? You know, and
right.
that would be at the board's purview, right?
Yeah.
So I was just, sorry, I just wanted to, like, get to the
It's one of those
point.
things that it was one of those things that I was thinking of as well. I don't think unless you live in our area, you realize the impact of these storms. You have to be out on my street shoveling snow in a northeaster when it's coming 35 miles an hour off the water. The houses take a beating, and I think that the commission places a large responsibility on the residents. You don't come offering any tax credits, any grants, any kind of real support for us. We're coming to you to ask how to get these things done whenever we have something that we want to do, if it doesn't fall within maintenance repair. It's sort of as though you come with a decree, not a plan, but a decree, and that decree has teeth in it. It has teeth in it such as cease and desist, fines, and the court costs. I believe it's sort of that we're under your thumb. That is how I see it. Take with it what you will, but it's a big responsibility, it's an economic burden, and there isn't any help coming from the commission.
Like I said, there's not much that we would stand firm on, and it sounds like you know, your house is all vinyl windows, vinyl siding, that's about the only thing. And if something blew off in a storm, you're welcome to fix maintenance pieces, but if you wanted to completely change.
A lot of the replacement pieces that you're talking about are well beyond the means of a lot of other residents.
No,
The
you can't
windows-
Replace your vinyl. If
Excuse me?
it's for storm damage or anything like that, you'd be able to replace it with like,
Right, but say that I did want to make a replacement. A lot of what I could do is beyond my means and a lot of the people that live on that street. We just don't have the money to meet the historical standards. And we have to. Once this becomes law, we have to. So what happens to these homes that the people that live in them can't afford to upgrade or repair or maintain? You may end up with it looking worse than it already does. And there are a number of homes that need repair on our street. So it's something to consider, you know, because when we had Summer Street, people were forcibly put out of their homes. That was then. West James mentioned it the last time we had a meeting. Well, now it's Summer Street 3.0. We're not going to be forced out of our homes. We're going to economically be forced out of our homes. That's all I have to say.
Kate Sakarik, 26 Bradford Street. So just to sort of continue on the heels of what Dennis was saying, I don't believe that when a historic district is created, that anybody goes around and does a survey of what's wrong and, you know, calls the homeowner on the carpet to say, you know, you've got to paint your house, you've got to, you know, fix, I mean, to what extent is that true or not true?
To put it in sports terms, it's more defensive, we're not offensive going out. We don't, I mean, we have demolition delays that are like literally falling apart. It would be great if we could do something early on, but we can't tell somebody what to do, you know, it's.
Right.
So,
Right, you can't tell someone, you
No.
know, I would love it if we were in a historic district and you could tell my neighbor in the next door that he has to paint his trim and his windows, but you can't, even
Right.
if we were in a historic district.
Right.
It's only if someday they all fall out and he has to do it. And I remember when you're talking about like a cease and desist, I remember the situation on Leiden Street. So we've got, you know, one of the oldest streets in the world, in the country. And I remember there was a fellow, he was a contractor, he bought the house, and he just immediately started stripping the siding off and replacing it with, I think it was vinyl siding. And he was a contractor, so he was able to do it. But he was stopped because he's on the oldest street in the country and he's doing something that's #1 on the do not do list. And I would just want to mention that, and Ryan will know this, any contractor, if you're not a contractor, you're not going to be re-siding your own house or replacing your windows or doing your own roof. You're going to have a contractor who's going to know what the historic district guidelines entail. And they're going to advise you what, you know, what's probably like, well, let's not even consider vinyl because, you know, that's going to get rejected by the commission. And so, you know, it's not like a homeowner has to waste all this time and energy. And I've seen a lot of contractors come in here on their client's behalf. It doesn't even, their client's not even here, and they come in and they say, I'm here about, you know, 28 Bradford Street, we're doing a roof, here's the, you know, here's the color, here's the material, and it's all set to go. Because typically it's that simple. But I do have a couple questions of my own. So on my house, which is very narrow, my upstairs only has one like normal window. I have 3 skylights and a very old window that I've never even opened in the 19 years I've lived there because I'm afraid that it might fall out. And I love it, so I don't want it to fall out. So when I want to keep the upstairs temperate, I put an AC unit in for the season in the upstairs window, which faces the street. If you look on MLS, there's a picture of my house with that unit in there. And, you know, it's on the street. It's the only place that I could put an air conditioner for 3 months. So what is the reaction there?
Well, it's not a permanent change to the building, so it's nothing that would have to come before us.
Okay.
It's a temporary.
Okay. Question number 2 on my house. Same situation, narrow, not a lot of space. During the storm that we had a couple of weeks ago, I lost power, and it was pouring rain, and my sump pumps didn't work. So I had to go to my auxiliary little generator and pump the basement out, which is stressful and messy. And so I just contacted my electrician to inquire about a hardwired generator to put it someplace. And I know that, you know, it shouldn't be out in front, and I'd rather not look at it myself. I'd rather it be kind of in the back. And, I mean, I consider myself a fairly good neighbor, so I would absolutely be screening it. But if you know, if, with screening, I noticed there's a lot of, sort of loosey-goosey, not, I shouldn't say that, but like, it could be trees, it could be, you know, trellis, it could be, you know, something like just boards, that kind of thing. But if this generator happened to be at all visible from the street, and we were in a historic district, what would I have to do?
We are very flexible. I mean, we'll work with you to try to find a solution, whether it's locating it somewhere else, and if that's not feasible, we would suggest screening. You know, and whether that's just like a small little fence or planting, you know, we would definitely work and try to find a solution.
And don't you think my neighbor would appreciate that? That it was screened?
Definitely,
That I would have to screen it?
right,
That I could not just let it, oh, here you go, nice big box
right,
that you have to look at, right?
right. And I mean, you know, we're not, we're very amenable, and we realize some people don't have money, and we try our hardest to work hard looking for different materials and working for solutions that'll make you know, make both parties happy, so.
And here's the thing about money. I just did some exterior improvements, and I replaced one of my horrible vinyl windows with a new bay window. It's wooden, and but it has, like, I think it's it's not aluminum, like, casting on the outside of it. It wasn't the most expensive window by any stretch. It wasn't the cheapest either, but it wasn't the most expensive. And if I could, I would, when I can, I'm going to replace all my vinyl windows, because I find that they've yellowed over time, and they're also, they block a ton of light. Like, I could have so much more light in my kitchen if I didn't have those vinyl windows, just as an aside. So this is the Benjamin Moore historic color chart. I just happened to use Benjamin Moore. But what if, you know, like, what if I came to the board and I said, well, I want to have a door and the color is purplicious. So, you know, if I came to you and I said, this is the color, these are the colors that are kind of close. I mean, is that something that you would consider?
I think it's pretty muted. I think it's definitely something that could be looked at.
I mean, again, it's not this isn't a real life
Right.
situation,
But again, we're open to hearing anything.
because, you know, our area is also pretty eclectic. You know, it's not P-town, but it's eclectic. So I think that should be taken into consideration, right? With what we're doing, you know, it's not Main Street in Hingham, it's
Right.
not Washington Street in Duxbury. It's an eclectic place with, like, a lot of commercial things going on and, you know, that kind of thing. And the last thing I want to say, and then I'll be quiet, to my fellow neighbors is that if we are in a historic district, we're protected from the town. Dickie Quintal, who's the chairman of the select board, said in a fall meeting, quote, "You haven't even seen what's coming down the line." I don't know what that means, but we were talking about the marina, in reference to the marina. So, you know, not just condos where the Nathaniel Morton School is, and where the green grass is, and where the empty playground is, but what if the marina decided that they want a 2-story parking garage? Not underground, just 2 levels. Shouldn't say that out loud, because God forbid they hear me, they'll probably do it. But imagine someone has a double lot in our neighborhood. I think it's 2 Freedom Street. Those could be 3-story condos, easily. And I know that some of my neighbors, myself included, you know, we sort of thought, well, how did 5-7 Water Street come to be if it's in a historic district? Now, first of all, I know it was during COVID. People didn't get as involved. Maybe they didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. If I had, I would have been to every single meeting. But Bill Forniciari made a good point at a meeting in the past that, you know, people have to get involved and they have to make it known, you know, what's going on in their neighborhood. You know, they have to they can't be just, you know, I mean, you can just live there if you want to, but then don't complain. You know, the reason the marina doesn't look like it was going to 2 years ago is because the neighborhood got involved. You know, so it's a cautionary tale, because I'm more afraid of what we're vulnerable towards than, you know, the preservation, as you all know, is very important to me, but I'm more afraid of what might come, and I hope to live there, God willing, a long time. And I don't want to be in the shadow of more stuff. And I think it's a small price to pay. And again, nobody has to pay anything up front. You know, I think there's some people who are worried that, like, they won't be able to afford their home, you know, because you're gonna come around and tell them your paint's chipping, get to it, which is not true.
Right.
So, yeah, okay, so thank you very much.
You know, there are, like since I've been on the commission for like 18, 19 years, and from when I started, the amount of new materials that are becoming available, like what was it that Bill Forniciari proposed on the Isaacs building? It was like a, not a vinyl, but it was like a thicker type of a plastic that like, so there's just always materials coming out that are less expensive, and we're always willing to look at other materials. Did anybody else want to speak, comment?
Hello, I'm Tim McGregor. I live at 5 Freedom Street. I just had a couple questions.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat your name again?
Sure, my name is Tim McGregor. I live at 5 Freedom Street.
Thanks.
Normally when I'm talking to you guys, it's about the marina. And I think it's not a surprise that the marina is a concern that a lot of neighbors have in terms of this. That often we wind up talking about what we call the big three: the marina, the yacht club, and the Nathaniel Morton School. And I think the fear a number of neighbors have is that one or two or all three of those will wind up not being part of this when it gets passed. The fear, because I know it's been mentioned before that the marina was discussed being put into it before, and then it wound up not being in it. And I think the fear people have is that this will get passed and it'll affect all of our homes, and at the last minute there'll be an amendment at town meeting or something, I don't know how it would work, and then the marina suddenly isn't in the historic district. Could you talk to me about that fear? Is that something we have to worry about?
I don't think I understand. Can you say that again?
Sure. Could you talk to me about what the risk is that this historic district expansion happens, but for instance, the marina is not included in it? Like the marina still continues to be in a carve-out that's not in the historic district after something happens at the last minute and this expansion happens and is voted through, but not including the marina.
Well, it is included, so there's no.
And that there's no way that could change.
I don't believe so, no.
I would think that if somebody came in and made a motion to reduce the scale of the district and
At town meeting?
at town meeting, they'd have to have a map drawn up, but if in advance they did, and you had a majority vote at town meeting to amend the main motion to expand the district, I think that could pass. I mean, right now, we reference the plan on record, but again, I think they could probably do a modified plan and ask town meeting to adopt a smaller district. I think that could happen.
I can't imagine that. I wouldn't imagine that happening, though, after what the town's going through with the marina, so. Is that a two-thirds vote?
No, it would be a majority vote to the main motion, two-thirds vote to pass the district after that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that is, I just want to share with the board, that is definitely a concern that I definitely have, and that I know others in the neighborhood have, that'll happen, and it'll feel like the rug's being pulled out from under us at the last minute.
Well, the people to talk to are in the back of the room, your precinct members,
That makes sense.
if it, you know.
My second question was just to follow up on something that Kate said. I was hoping the board could help me better understand. The 5 and 7 Water Street is something that has come up, as well as, I think it's 150 Water Street, the big blue building on the Rotary. Those are both in the historic district, and those were, in the process with the marina thing, those were what everyone was pointing to. We don't want something like that happening, and they don't like those buildings. Is it a situation where if there had been more pushback from neighbors when that was happening, that there would have been tools to keep those from happening? How did those wind up passing?
Definitely, I mean, the several people that came all spoke in support. So
Gotcha.
I think we really do weigh heavily on neighbors' input. And
Okay.
they're all, I mean, we had several meetings that were publicized, no one came to speak in opposition. And it is subjective, I mean, I voted no, nobody else here was on the board then. So it is dependent on the makeup of the board. We did change it significantly from what it was originally proposed. We worked over several meetings to change it to what it is now, whether it's liked or not. You know, and the same with the Harbor Town. I mean, there was going to be another story on that one. It was going to be much bigger. You know, we got them to do like setback, separate buildings to make it look a little bit more. But, you know, the fact is it was a big lot. I mean, what else can go there? They're not going to build single-family homes. It's going to be something.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
Just also, I think, when I look at those, I'm sorry, you had a cinder block garage and a gravel parking lot there on the Water Street one. On the one down at the roundabout, you had a vacant hole in the ground for probably 10 years and a burnt-out building for 10 years prior to that. So sometimes, too, it's not as simple as just saying, what do we want, but is this better than what's there now?
And I think what's really important is that the guidelines, you know, they're based on looking at the built landscape, the historic landscape that exists. And even within the existing historic district, that landscape is very varied. So you have what's on Water Street is very different from what's on Bradford Street. And so as, you know, commission members, there is some variance in what might be permitted in one part of the district versus another, simply because we're always trying to look at the scale and historical continuity of a neighborhood and trying to make sure that new buildings, new construction are not out of place in that neighborhood. And so that's where I think it's helpful to think about Plymouth as being these series of neighborhoods. And Kate has already mentioned like Leiden Street, you know, the oldest street in America. So that's something that, you know, we look at very, very carefully. And Bradford Street, I think, again, would be a street that we would look at very, very carefully because of its continuity and its cohesiveness of a historic landscape of smaller scale dwelling buildings. But elsewhere, you know, in the waterfront district, there may be other places where larger buildings are not necessarily out of place. So a lot of times we can look back at Plymouth's past and say, well, in the industrial period, the waterfront had a lot of large-scale buildings there. So, you know, we're not trying to freeze Plymouth in time. But on some landscapes, we kind of are, in the sense of being consistent with that scale of the historic neighborhood.
That makes sense. And then sorry, were you?
I was going to say, in 5 to 7 Water Street, we did do a lot of work. I mean, we researched into Sanborn maps from the early, middle, late 19th century, looked at what was there, you know, and there were warehouses in that area, bigger buildings. There were, you know, 3-family buildings. So we worked with the builder, the developer, to change it a lot to try to represent that type of a feel, whether it has it or not. But there was a lot of input and work that did go into that.
That makes sense. And then I actually came with those two questions, but then I came up with one more while everyone was talking, just to help me understand a little bit better. We don't have vinyl siding on our house. If we did, just because I got a little confused in the exchange earlier, if we had, which we don't, but if we had blue vinyl siding on our house and we decided to replace it with identical blue vinyl siding, so it did not change the look, it was the same color and texture, material and everything like that, is that something we would be allowed to do? Because it didn't seem straightforward to me what the answer was.
Yeah, no, I mean, he did mention that it might not be as clear in the guidelines, but, you know, that is something we should look to review and update. I mean, we did the best we could with it, so we would do like for like, as long as it fits within the historic guidelines.
I don't know what that answer means. In that specific example, would we be allowed to?
No.
No,
No,
even though the guidelines don't currently say that.
I'd have to look through.
I mean,
the
that is,
answers
I mean, I'm
example.
just saying that's a little concerning too, because also if this expands, it's like for like right now, but those guidelines might also change.
Well, it is like for like, but as long as.
Unless, but not necessarily. The example I just gave was like for like. And again, it's not something we have, it's not something we're talking about doing. I'm just trying to understand
Well,
what
I
that
mean,
means.
it's, you know, I mean, if somebody had electric purple painted house and wanted to do like for like and repaint it purple, I don't think it doesn't fit within the historic guidelines. We wouldn't allow that, even though it's like for like.
And that totally makes sense to me. It's just confusing when the answer that we keep being given is as long as it's like for like, it's okay, when that's not actually the case. And if that's the case, I just would prefer to better understand what the restrictions
So when you
are.
file an application, it's either a certificate of appropriateness, which you have to get publicized, come before, a certificate of non-applicability. You fill that out and you'll bring in the documentation showing what you're looking to do. Because what is like for some people isn't historically appropriate like for like. So then it comes before us and we make a determination and we'll write on a certificate of non-applicability, give it back to the town, and then you're able to just go through with like for like. So it's not, what somebody might think is like for like isn't necessarily, and it might not necessarily fall within the historic district guidelines.
Okay.
So it wouldn't make sense that if somebody has, just anything you have can just be replaced. It's, as long as it fits within the historic district guidelines, and, we'll review it. Most things are, like for like, as long as it's,
I think that makes sense. I just think the second half of that sentence should be said more often, because in a lot of the communications, what we've been told is as long as like for like, you're fine. And it sounds like as long as like for like, you're fine, as long as it fits within the guidelines, which is a totally fair position. I just submit that that's not being consistently communicated. And a lot of people are hearing as long as it's like for like, you're fine. And it sounds like that's not necessarily the case. And the exceptions to that might totally make sense. I'm just saying they're not being, I think, clearly communicated to the neighborhood.
yeah, hopefully we are now. I mean, hopefully it is clearer now.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, take a look at this. That's from the end.
Okay.
We're 5 and 7 Water Street and the Rotary Building, 40B construction? No. Not at all. So that didn't play any part in it. Okay, thank you.
Donna, did you?
I'm Donna Curtin. I'm a resident at 148 Summer Street. I'm a town meeting member, Precinct 3. I'm very excited that you are taking steps to expand the historic district. I think a lot of people in town feel that this is a step long overdue and something that a lot of people in our community will feel the benefit of. Visitors to our community, but also people who live here, people who've moved here because they drove through Plymouth and found it charming and lovely and decided to settle down here. This happens through our visual experience of what's on the landscape, our built landscape, and having a historic district actually provides us with a tool to preserve some of that character, because that character is always under threat. There are always pressures. And as Anne pointed out, no community is frozen in time, and it's not the purpose of a historic district to freeze change. Things evolve and change over time, but you want that change to be in keeping with the character of what's distinctive about the place that we live. So I think this is a really important tool. And I would just say, you know, as a homeowner, I live outside of the district. And I'm thinking, as I'm listening to the comments tonight, how would I feel if the district was expanded to my neighborhood? I think, like Kate, I'd be extremely excited about it, actually. But it might pose other considerations. As a homeowner, I think being a homeowner is something that is daunting in any cases. Whether or not you're in a historic district, you have to invest in your home and take care of it, and there are times when you might not be able to afford that. So in some ways, I don't think that your obligations as a homeowner significantly change if you're in a historic district. It just might be that there are certain things that are going to require a little more thought or discussion. And in terms of a lot of the discussion that's going on about, am I allowed to do the like for like, my understanding was always that we were in these situations talking about ordinary repair and maintenance. In the case of ordinary repair and maintenance. Now, I don't know if replacing all the siding of your house is ordinary repair and maintenance. That may be a larger and more visible change that might trigger some review. But if it is ordinary repair and maintenance and you are not changing the way your house looks, you are grandfathered, my friend. Your 100-year-old property is grandfathered, and you do not have to seek permission of the Historic District Commission if my understanding is correct. So I think it is really important that everybody, you know, always doing that periodic review is a good thing to be really clear with people because there are concerns. However, if you do want to change something, if you want to, you know, change a window or change the shape of a doorway or change the colorways, then you do need to go before this commission. And I must say I've been before you many times and have found it to be a place where people can present things and there is a give and take and there's reference to the guidelines that you have before you, because that's the larger picture here, is having the guidelines that allow us to preserve something that is shared by more than an individual. It's something that's shared by our community. And we all partake of it when we walk down our streets and see what we have here in Plymouth that they may not have in other communities. So I say, bully for you. And the other thing is, to get something like this through town meeting takes advocacy. So when you go to town meeting, for all of you that are in favor of this change, I hope you'll let your town meeting members, including those of us at Precinct 3, that you feel this is a good idea. I know that our chairman and some of our Precinct 3 members are back in the back of the room there, and we all support this change and we'll be advocating for it. So I hope it goes through, and I will certainly be lending my support to it. With sympathy for all those that live, and with a lot of hopefulness for the good that this can bring to everybody. Thanks.
Hi. I also, like everyone else, Jessica McHugh, 5 Freedom Street. But like everybody else in this front row, I'm usually talking about marina stuff.
Just give your name for the...
Sure, Jessica McHugh, MCHUGH, 5 Freedom Street. So I don't have my questions written out exactly. What strikes me continuously through the conversation, to pick up on the thread that everybody has mentioned, is confusion, misinformation. As something is written, it is one way. As it is interpreted, it is another way. I love, like, Donna Curtin's one of my most favorite people in the world, and Donna, I love your interpretation. Will this board in 5 years have that same interpretation? I don't know. So I want to get back to, given the interpretation of the board right now, and I should mention that I hope to have our house forever. We bought our house as a forever house. So I'm guessing the board will look a little different 30 years from now or 40 years from now or whatnot. But given the board's current interpretation of things the way they are written right now, if I can just get back into the very nitty-gritty specifics, because I've definitely, to echo everything, have heard a few different things. So let's go real basic. A few years ago, we redid the trim on our house, right? Did it all have to be redone? Probably not, but I'm a very thorough person. So if I'm gonna do a good portion of it, I just like the evenness, and this is a good opportunity to redo all of it. In that case, because we were doing like for like, which I also understand can be confusing. In that case, we are choosing to do the entire trim around our house, and we're doing it in the same bluish, you know, that blue. I know Anne probably knows the exact blue color I'm talking about, but you know the color, like that blue, that's that historic blue. In that case, what's the process? Do I have to go to Lee and his team and fill out an application so then you guys say this is applicable or not applicable? Like, what's the actual process? Or can I just go crazy with my paint and then you come to me later and say, Jess, you went crazy with your paint and you needed paperwork?
We do informal hearings, discussions. You can just come to any meeting. You know, we have people that just come in and ask us questions. You know, we were thinking of doing this down the road. We were thinking of painting the house, or we were thinking of doing the siding over. Can we chat about that? And we'll have a discussion, and we'll give input, listen to the applicant, and you know, kind of give them our thoughts and feelings.
Okay, so it's definitely, we still have to come before you. Like, that still has to happen, whether it's formal or informal. The step, if we're looking at a step, is we can't just put it up for bid amongst contractors. We first should come talk to you guys and do an informal conversation. Like, what are the actual steps?
You can do that. I mean, if you wanted to just go to your contractor, sometimes contractors come in before us to propose something. So it's up to you. You can come in as a resident. Anybody can come before us. You can ask before you took on the cost of a contractor, depending on what it is. If it's just painting, you know, you could probably just have your contractor come in and propose it.
I can't imagine adding that, like having my painter come in and I'm paying him for his time to come here. I'd much rather do it myself. But I'm just trying to figure out, like, this step is we would absolutely have to come before you just to do trim the same color that it's been for however many years.
Well, right, so that's regular maintenance. That would be like for like. So you would just fill out a certificate of non-applicability.
Okay, so we do have to fill out a paperwork.
It's a certificate of non-applicability because
Okay.
sometimes people say, oh, it's like for like, and they're doing like, you know, a white and it's actually a gray, or you know, which wouldn't matter, but it could be. So what somebody thinks is a like for like might not actually be. We've had plenty of circumstances where it's not like for like, and then we'll ask them to come in for a certificate of appropriateness if it's not a like for like.
Okay, so there'd have to be some paperwork. Hey, Lee. So I'd show up in Lee's inbox, and I'd say, this is our application to determine, or we would say, we're putting forward that this is a non-applicable application. And then you guys would meet, and we could be here or not be here, and you would decide, oh, actually, this needs to be a certificate of appropriateness. I'm just trying to understand the steps, because right now it's really easy. I say, hey, Tim, you know what? Like, we need to redo this part of our house. Like, let's get a couple quotes. Let's do this. So I'm just trying to figure out what are the additional steps that we have to do to be responsible to the commission.
Lee, do you want to?
I think actually there's some confusion about the certificate of non-applicability. And I'm looking in the guidelines because a certificate of non-applicability is issued when the work does not involve any exterior architectural feature, is not visible from a public way, or the commission has previously decided to exclude the feature, building, or structure from its review. I don't think we have an application for someone who's just doing routine and ordinary maintenance on their property. So I think that is something where the intention of the historic district is not to burden property owners with another step before they can do any kind of maintenance. I just think we need to clarify that, because I think the non-applicability is one of those certificates that sometimes is used by property owners who are thinking they need approval, so they just pull that certificate, but I don't really think, according to the guidelines, that's what it says. So I think that maybe this commission just needs to take some time to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I think we're all on the same page in preserving Plymouth's historic landscapes and expanding the district. But it's very clear that there have been inconsistencies in interpretation, and I can understand why that would be a huge obstacle to supporting the expansion if that's the perception or if that's what's been happening. So I just think that I think you all could spend a lot more time asking the same question, and you might ask it of each of us and get a different response. So,
Which also makes it feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So it sounds like we don't know. To my question,
So if I
we don't
could
know.
just real quickly jump in. So what we used to do, and we've kind of gotten away from that recently, is that we would make that determination either at a staff level or consult with the chair about it. So I think, for you moving forward, as you think about what you may or may not want to do, is at this point, I think there was a concern that a couple decisions were made that maybe other members didn't agree with. So now there was kind of a feeling that the whole board should be reviewing all of this. But again, we could always go back to any kind of level of, hey, we think this is not even something that's subject to review. We don't think so. What do you think? And either delegate to the chair or just get an opinion without doing any more. It can be fairly informal, and at one point, that was left to staff to make that call. But again, however you want to do it.
I think we did do that, and then there was one instance where it was clearly not a certificate of non-applicability that was granted, so we just started saying, why don't we just bring it to the commission? But I mean, we could go back to,
And then maybe there's a balance between the two of all or nothing, but some
Well, it could be-
additional balance.
right? It could be training staff a little bit more, letting them know what would be considered certificate of non-applicability.
Okay, so then my next question, and I'm gonna guess it's gonna go back to what Ann was just highlighting, is about that specific storm. So we had a bit of our roof, it was not our roof that was targeting Kate's house, it was another neighbor's. But a bit of our roof, about this much, that fell off the little, I know there's a ridge cap, right? So it flew on off. Was very surprised working from home, and I heard a very large noise outside the window to see my roof there. So we had that fixed. So what it sounds like is that because it's an emergency repair, it's like for like, we're not sitting there putting a cupola up, although I know there's a cupola around right now that perhaps could, separate conversation. But we're not doing any of that, we're just fixing it. So in that case, do we have to let you know after the fact that we did this?
Now, it would all be done through the building department. So if you had an emergency repair, he'll issue the permit, and it just, as long as it's like for like, he'll issue. So if you have an asphalt roof and the wind blows it off and you need to fix it immediately, that's just through the building department.
Okay. And then, okay. And so is that why, so like John Carver a couple weeks ago had to come
Yeah.
in front of you guys?
So the difference with that one is the debate of whether or not it was a copper roof or not a copper roof. If it was a copper painted roof and like for like, or whether they were going to simply replace it with something. I think they wanted to go from that metal roof to a asphalt roof.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay. And then my final question is, and maybe it's not, it is, as you're conversing about this and thinking of nuances, I mean, Mike, you live 30 feet from our house. You know our house, like, there is no view of our house that is not in public view. We do have a little bit more yard, so we can do a little bit more screening if we ever had to do something. But our neighbors have much smaller lots, and the idea of, it's just curious to me, like, I just don't know how, and I just would hope that that's really being considered, because a lot of the homes in this area, they don't have spaces that aren't in public view. So the idea to screen is great, but it's not always going to be an option. And some of the homeowners would not have space to even do screening. So anyway, I think that just speaks again to the nuances of the conversation.
I don't think we would, if somebody came before us and like wanted to have a generator, has kids and needs to have a generator, and there was no way to screen it, I mean, I don't think we would say, no, you can't have a generator. We would work as best we can.
I should hope not. I should
Right.
hope. Okay,
And-
we don't have kids. We have four-leggeds, but I want my power too.
Oh, no, I just use that as an example. Anybody that came before us.
Yeah.
But that's also why we have the certificate of hardship, because if there's a specific case where a property cannot accommodate, that either, and it's not just for financial reasons. It might be the financial reasons for the property owners, but it could be something like, we have no room on our lot to, except here to put in our HVAC system. And it would be a hardship to us not to have an HVAC system in our property.
Oh, okay.
And so that's, the certificate of a hardship would allow the commission to say, in this one case, because it's a hardship, we're going to allow it, without having to say, well, now that we've done that, it's a precedent for every other application we receive.
That makes sense.
So that's one of the, the way the historic districts are created, is to allow for exceptions on a case-by-case basis that will hopefully help property owners.
Okay.
And again, it's not to say that, no, sorry, because there was no HVAC units in 1870, you're stuck with heating with, your chimneys. That's not the purpose. So I think that's where we don't often see certificate of hardships, but I think one of the reasons for that is because a lot of the applications that we get are for larger projects, maybe being done in other parts of town. And we recognize that Bradford Street is, again, it's a residential street. There are smaller house sizes, smaller lot sizes. So there may be things that, on a case-by-case basis, we might be making exceptions for, but through that certificate of hardship, so that it's not a blanket, okay, well, we interpreted the guidelines this way once and this way another time, so.
That's very helpful. And now we've touched all the certificates. Look at that. We're so good. And then the last thing, which is not a comment, it's just a plea/statement to our Precinct 3 people who we love, is that should at town meeting you hear rumbles on the floor that there would be something put forth to exclude the Marina Yacht Club or the school from this very important thing, I hope y'all slap it down, because if the biggest landowners don't have to be responsible to our historic neighborhood, it's defeating a lot of the purpose. So that's my plea to the back of the room and the side. So thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments, questions? All right, seeing none, so we'll come back to the board. If anybody wanted to make a comment before we take a vote, Ryan, did you want to?
I think everybody would agree that we're all appreciative of everybody coming out and being involved for or against this. It's an important process. A ton of times recently we've heard complaints about some of the buildings that have been spoken about tonight, or other things that have been approved but are now up for a demo delay that people have opinions on at a time where it's too late and nothing, or maybe not enough was done in certain people's opinions, or now nothing can be done. So you're all participating in something early in this case, which is great. Something that I think is pretty clear that we've all already been talking about is updating the guidelines for clarity, which has kind of been in the works. From my standpoint, I work with a ton of new materials every day, and there's some that I would say should be added at this point that aren't in there right now. That being said, I think sometimes the vagaries that have been mentioned can work in your favor. It helps us work with each individual homeowner, property owner, with some discretion, like the way Ann mentioned, that we would have very, very strict thoughts on a street like Leiden Street, and maybe allow some things that we wouldn't on Leiden Street on another street. That if the guidelines were to be stricter in certain areas, might not allow for that. And I'd also just like to say that prior to being on the board, I worked on a number of projects that the board had purview over, and I would unequivocally say that every one of those is better because of the board's involvement, the commission's involvement, their input, the changes that they suggested to those projects. So in my opinion, it is a good move. I would put my house in a historic district. I don't think anybody would be interested in it being in one, because it's in the woods, but I would be all for it.
There we go. I think that what we really have with the historic district is an opportunity to really safeguard our community, and certainly it is a trade-off you have to weigh for those who live in the proposed expansion area. You know, the cost, and even if it just ends up being your time, that's costly. You know, to have this extra level of review. So I recognize that even as much as we might want to say, well, a lot of things you don't have to come to us for review, there are a lot of things that you would. So we don't want to downplay that. There is a new review process that you'd have to consider in making changes to your property. But you have to ask if that is outweighed by the benefit of preserving what is unique to this particular neighborhood and contributes to Plymouth's unique character. And so I know it's easy for those of us who don't live in the neighborhood that's being expanded into, potentially by the district. It's easy for us to say, oh, yep, it's definitely worth it. When it's harder, obviously, if you actually are living there and faced with this choice. I certainly, if my house was being up for potential historic district, I would also be in favor of it, because it is, as someone who was born and grew up in Plymouth and loves our community, it does break my heart every time we lose one of these historic streetscapes or landscapes or buildings. And really one of the only ways we can actually protect those buildings and landscapes is through something like a local historic district. The other tool we have is the demolition delay bylaw, which can delay something for a year, could lead to an alternative collaboration that would protect a building more long term, but it's really very limited. So the district is a way to sort of, again, allow us to have that peace of mind that the historic environment will be protected and will remain, which I think does have benefits to living and working in the community. Not that the historic buildings, haven't changed over the years, not that they might not, they will probably change in the future, use changes, but it's just a way for us to slow things down so that we can really evaluate, where we are as a community and hopefully preserve what's best about our community.
I'm going to go along with Ann, but I do understand that all you folks out there need clarification on some of these things. I know the book was done in what was it, Lee, 2007, 2008? And there is some gray areas there. And a lot of folks don't understand what are their rights and what are they going to have to come back in front of the board on. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding as far as repairs or what they can actually do on their own without having to go through an entire process. And if we could get that cleaned up, I think a lot of people would be a lot more comfortable.
Am I on? Yes. Okay. Good evening. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Your support means the world to us, and it means the world to our town. I know there was a lot of concern about individual repairs, and it's quite valid in things as trim, windows, pieces of roofs. But I think what is really eminent is the condition of our neighborhoods and our town. The revenue of your own particular home and the growing revenue of it, preserving our history and what it brings to our town, whether it's business, trade, tourism. I think that far exceeds the question of whether or not the trim is adequate or if you have to come before us. I understand the process could be a little bit daunting, but I think in the long run, what a historic district can bring to our town as far as historical significance and continuing that far exceeds some improvements that we would be more than happy to work with all of you on. So thank you again.
Yeah, I think that a couple of people touched on, and Ryan mentioned, the board is a pretty good resource, knowledgeable. I would say other than me, we have architects, builders, historians, realtors. Quite often we'll have somebody come in for an informal hearing and tell us what they're looking to do or some thoughts they had, and through the knowledge of this board, we'll give some input, maybe a better way to do something or a cheaper way to do it, or offer some input that benefits people. So it is a great resource as well if you're thinking of doing something or you had some thoughts. If you came in, I mean, we could definitely give some good input with the knowledge that is here before you. So that's all I have to say. So if nothing else, why don't we bring it back to the board for a motion if somebody wanted to entertain? Oh, were you there?
Oh, is the motion?
I would make a motion to recommend the expansion of the historic district into the Bradford Union Street area.
Second on that motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Kim, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. And anytime we meet the second and third Wednesdays of the month, if you had any further questions, come to any meeting, chat with us. Any questions? Thank you.